All right, we'll call the 2014 Town of Liberty Grove annual meeting to order, please. Once again, we're calling the meeting to order, please. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending. If you have cell phones, if you wouldn't mind turning them off or putting them on vibrate so as not to interrupt the meeting, that would be appreciated. And would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to take a couple moments to do some introductions. To my immediate right is our clerk administrator, Walter Combs. To his right is our treasurer, office assistant, Janet Johnson. Supervisor Frank Forkert, front row. Lou Cavazos, front row. And I do not believe Nancy is back yet. She's flying in this afternoon and is trying to make the meeting this evening. Also, I'd like to make notice of our town crew. They're a little shy, so they usually do not come to these meetings. Jay Olson, Richard Smith, Brian Smith, and Joe Weiss. And if Lou would step to the podium to be sworn in. You can come right here. So. And if you would raise your right hand, please. And if you wouldn't mind citing the oath, please.
I, Lou Cavazos, who have been elected to the office of Town Board Supervisor in and for the town of Liberty Grove in Door County, Wisconsin, but have not yet entered into the duties thereof, swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hugh? And if you would mind reading that, please.
Sure.
And raise your right hand, please.
Sure. I, Hugh Mulliken, who have been elected to the office of Town Board Supervisor in and for the town of Liberty Grove in Door County, Wisconsin, but have not yet entered into the duties thereof, swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Thank you. Congratulations. And welcome aboard. You need to sign.
Huh?
You need to sign. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right, next we have the minutes of the annual meeting held on April 14th of 2013. I believe you had copies available. Are there any additions or corrections on those minutes? If not, the chair will entertain a motion to approve. Peter?
Question on page 1, Susan Watson said Westwick roads do not protect roads, it should be do not protect. That's about the second last paragraph, about the middle of the paragraph.
You got it.
Where's it?
That's under elector business.
Yes.
And your correction again, I'm sorry, Peter?
Should be do not instead of.
Oh,
I'll move adoption.
I'm sorry, who seconded, please?
Carl Johnson.
Thank you. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. And then we have the minutes of the special town meeting held November 18th of 2013. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes, please? If not, the chair will entertain a motion to approve. And is there a second, please, Gary? Or- Second, Kathy Ward. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, we have with us this evening Michael Konechny from Schenck, the Schenck office out of Green Bay. He is a certified public accountant. He has worked with municipalities, if I remember correctly, maybe I shouldn't bring this up, 30-plus years. And he has a long history in the state of Wisconsin in doing this for various municipalities. And we've asked him to present the annual report this evening. Schenck is the firm that has done our audit and has done our continuing audit this year. So Mike, if you would go ahead, please. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, good evening. I believe there were copies of the financial report. I know it's kind of a stapled document, but I have the same thing here. And like John mentioned, we, as I think many of you know, we did an audit, I think we presented last June to the, at a town board meeting. And we had, I don't know if it was 4 or 5 recommendations in that audit. And I believe actually all of them have been implemented. But one of the main ones was to, I guess prior to this year, the town was keeping its records pretty much on a cash basis, you know, money in, money out. And we recommended the town go to what would be called generally accepted accounting principles for governments. And there's some significant differences in that. And that was implemented and that is incorporated into this report. So this report really doesn't look too much like the one you had in June. And this one will be, you know, will continue. I'm assuming the town will obviously going through that work to put these additional records on. This report is more informative, contains more information, and is more up to standards of government accounting. Now, keep in mind, this is a one-year report, so we don't have comparative data, and it'll be more informative as you're gonna be getting similar type information, comparative. So what I'd like to do is kind of walk through, not read it to you, but kind of just look at each page, kind of go over some of the changes and some of the additional information and what it really means. And then I guess I'll take questions on any of the information, but it's probably best that I give you a kind of an overview first of the information. So if you want to turn to, I guess just turn to page 3 of the report. Starts the first financial statement is on page 3, titled Statement of Net Position. Now, it's kind of maybe a funny or weird title. If you're running a business, this would be your balance sheet. You know, this is a picture of the net worth of the town as of December 31st, 2013. Now, and we didn't have these statements, or not at least in this format in the last report. Separated into 2 activities, governmental activities and business type activities. The business type activities, that's your utility. The governmental activities, that's everything else. That's the way to look at this. So focusing on each column, the government activities, $17.7 million in assets. And what we included this year, the last like half of that asset listing are your capital assets. And by capital assets, sometimes called fixed assets, it's your land, buildings, equipment, some of your infrastructure or roads. What we did is we put on GASB standards, the government accounting standards said, go back 10 years, 2004 was the year this standard got implemented. So that's what we did, but Bud had records that we could go back 10 years and put the infrastructure additions on. So anyway, so there's more detail on that later in the report, but those are those $1 million numbers there at the end of that column. That was just developed a few months ago. So anyway, you had 17.7 million of assets, liabilities about 10.7 million of liabilities. 8 million, the bigger one numbers there, 8 million due to other governments. That's the liability due the school district, the county from the tax roll. So that's just money you collect and you pay to them. But then the long-term obligations down there, the 515 due within 1 year and the 2.1 million. This number was not on your records last year. Well, it was on your records, but it was not on your financial statements. That is the long-term debt that the town owes. And there's more information on that later. So what we did this year was put the capital assets on and the debt on. Gives you a true picture. And then you go down to net position. You want to call it net equity, stockholders' equity, whatever. It's the equity of the town, about $5.4 million of equity. And then the business type activities, that column, that always had its capital assets on because the Public Service Commission requires that of a water and sewer utility. But you had 2.2 million of assets, 20,000 of liabilities. There's no long-term debt of your utility. And then net position or equity of 2,225,000. So this is you call it a consolidated balance sheet showing everything the town owns, everything it owes, all on one page. Okay, the next page is kind of a different format. It's called Statement of Activities. And it kind of shows you, well, how do we get to those ending equity numbers? And just, it reads from left to right there. You have expenses. And this is what you call, if you're familiar, full accrual expenses. If you spent $500,000 on a road project, that's not going to be in here as an expense because the road's going to last 20 years. It's depreciated over the 20 years, recognized as an expense. So this is purely, similar to a corporation. That's the way they would do it if they built a building. They wouldn't put the whole thing out as it's an investment. It's got useful life. So these are your expenses. $1.6 million in governmental activities, $162,000 in utility. Then the way this works, you go to your right there, you deduct charges for services, you deduct operating grants, and the only one you really get, the main one you get is the operating grant from the state of Wisconsin for transportation. That's at $221,000. And then you have capital grants and contributions. That represents that $911,000 represents the fair market value of land that was donated to the town last year. I think that was it Grandview? Grandview, yes. So, that's something that town owns right now, but you gotta put it on required to put on at fair market value or estimated fair market value at the time of donation or receipt. So then you get a net number, net expense in that governmental activity column, totaling negative 343. And then you kind of drop down and say, well, how did we fund that? You had property taxes, some state aids, and some miscellaneous items. Then it shows a change in net position of $1.4 million to the positive. Well, that sounds pretty good, but keep in mind that $900,000 donation is in there. You know, that's obviously the big reason for the positive change in equity. The utility, on the other hand, had negative numbers in its water and sewer utility of $58,000, and you can see their equity went down a little bit, about $48,000 from the prior year. So again,
I
this,
can't figure out where you are on this sheet.
okay, I was on page 5 there, yeah, and maybe if you have, it might be hard to read if you have a stapled copy there, yeah. Page 4 and 5 is a 2-page statement. Sorry about that, it might be hard to read if you only have a stapled, because it continues onto page 5, into those net columns. So anyway, so that's new information. That was not in the previous report. Now, going to page 6, these will be a little bit easier, I think, to understand, because this is the way you keep your books on what we call a governmental or a fund basis. And page 6 is your balance sheet of your general fund. And some of these same numbers will appear in here that we previously went over. But the fund does not have the capital assets or the long-term debt. And here I'd focus on the fund balance section, kind of in the middle. $477,000 of fund balance at year end. And there was $200,000 that was leftover money from a long-term debt issue that was issued in 2013. Only part of it was spent, $500,000 was borrowed. And then there was money assigned for the 2015 budget. And there were some unassigned numbers, or excuse me, some other subsequent year expenditure numbers where the town has a list, just various fire district startup, salt shed roof, old fire station, harbor improvements, list of about 7 or 8 items that make up that $130,000. And then your unassigned fund balance of about $118,000. That is your working capital, your unappropriated cash surplus at year end. And I know we talked when we were here doing the audit last June, most governments keep that number at, say, somewhere between, I don't know, there's a wide range, but 10 to 20% of your budget maybe is a pretty common place to be. And your budget, if you usually take out debt service, your operating budget is about $1.8 million. So you're probably a little less than 10%. You're probably 6-7% or so of your budget. So, but you do have those other amounts in the assigned column. So and then page 7, that statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. Again, how do you get to those fund balance numbers? You had revenues of $2 million, almost $2.2 million. And obviously taxes is the biggest number there. And then expenditures by major category, most of it being in public works. But you have other categories of expenditures, and you had debt service $557 of principal, $115,000 of interest. And then you come up with a net excess expenditures of $282,000. You did borrow $500,000 of new money last year. And then you had a net positive change in fund balance at $217. Now, if you take out the $200,000, you know, that you kind of earmarked for the next year in debt proceeds, you pretty much broke even for the year. You know, be a $17,000 change. Then I'll jump to page 9, actually. Page 9 takes that same column that was on a previous page and compares it to your annual budget. And again, I'll just kind of go over the totals there. You budgeted 2.1 million for revenues, you collected 2,184,000. So you had $84,000 in additional revenues. Positive variation, we call that. On the expenditure side, you budgeted 2.5 million, and you spent 2,466,000. So you had 42,000 of unspent, you know, less than your budget for expenses. That's a positive variation. Then your borrowed money, you actually borrowed more than you had in the budget. You borrowed 500. And you can see how it all flows down into your ending fund balance of 477. Okay, then pages 10, 11, and 12 are the utility statements. Like I said, these are what we call your governmental activities, sometimes called a proprietary fund because it's operated like a business. The water and sewer utility, I guess the key numbers there, you had $507,000 in cash and investments. At the unrestricted cash and investments, you also had 26,000 of restricted cash and investments, so you had about 533 in total. Very little liabilities. And that's the same numbers we had on the other page. Page 11 separates that into water and sewer utility. And you can see the revenues there, 45,000 from water, 59 from sewer. Expenses, though, were higher in both categories, 64 under water, 97 under sewer. So you had operating losses in both water and sewer. Totaled 58,000. You have some non-operating things there. You do levy a tax, and you had interest income, but you had a net negative change in net position of about 48,000. And just to comment on the utilities, obviously I think you've done pretty well over the years because you've accumulated $530,000 with a relatively small, you know, utility operation. But right now, it doesn't seem your rates they're barely covering your cost. And your rates seem to be a little out of sorts with Sister Bays a little bit. You'd think you'd be more in line. Your water is actually, I think, a little bit higher, and your sewer is a little bit lower. So, it's something to look at. I've talked to the town board about kind of looking at that. You certainly got a real strong balance sheet, but your operating statement could look a little better.
You're aware that we are a little behind Sister Bay because they raise the rates, and then we come, it may be a quarter or two later that we raise our rates, so.
Right, right. I know you raised your rates, I think it was in July, middle of the year, sometime August, yeah. So, but you're still, I think you're still a little behind them in sewer, yeah. And then page 12 is a utility cash flow, statement of cash flows. it really takes that operating statement there and kind of reconciles it to change in cash. Like I said, even though you had those operating losses, you did have a positive cash flow of $3,700. And the reason is, I mean, there's depreciation recognized on those operating statements, and that means your pipes and lift station and everything have decreased in value. One more year is used up on them. Now, there's just a couple things that, starting on page 13 starts the notes to the statements, and I guess I wasn't gonna go through the first few pages, they just explain the captions, the accounting policies. But we wanna go to, let's kinda jump all the way to page 20. Page 20 is a summary of your capital assets, and like I said, this information was compiled by the town and then put into our software to give you the values here. Now, these are actual cost values. I can just, like the land, you had $900,000 of land at the beginning of the year. The 911,000 represents the donated land, so you ended up the year at $1,000,008. The other ones that are being land isn't depreciated, you know, you pay for it, you have it, it doesn't necessarily change. The capital assets improvements, other than buildings, machinery and equipment and infrastructure, you had about $8 million worth of cost. You added about $507,000 of road projects that were capitalized during the year. You come up with end of year cost of about $8.6 million. And then we take depreciation off of that, off of those numbers, and that's down the next line, $2.5 million prior to this year, $252 was increased depreciation, and then you end up 2.8. And then you get a net, you wanna call it like net book value of your assets, being depreciated $5.8 million. And then the way this works, you subtract the debt you have outstanding on these assets, $2.6 million, so you have a net investment in capital assets of almost $5 million. And the same thing, summary, and this summary I think we had in last year's report because the business type utilities had their assets. They have a net investment or a book value of about $1 million, almost $1.7 million. And then maybe jump into the middle of page 21. This is your long-term obligations or long-term debt. Outstanding at the beginning of the year, $2.7 million. And like I said before, you borrowed $500,000 additional debt, retired $557,000. And so you're outstanding at the end of the year, $2,681,000, of which $515,000 is due the next year. Interest paid during the year was $115,000. And then we have on page 22, we list the 4 debt issues that the town has. You know, you have bonds, notes, and then 2 bank loans, totaling to $2.6 million. And then we listed out a debt schedule. It shows in 6 years, you will be fully retired on your long-term debt. And I can tell you, this is one of the key ratios that Moody's or Standard and Poor's will run with municipalities is they'll say, how much debt is being paid off in the next 5 years? Well, I guess you look pretty good here. You got all but $33,000. You know, they like that to be at least 25% of your total debt. Well, heck, yours is about, 98%. So that's very positive. There are cities that keep pushing their debt out, and kind of like other governments, maybe, bigger ones. But anyway, so this is you look very positive on that. Then we have your legal margin for new debt, in case you're interested. The statutes allow a town, village, or city to borrow up to 5% of its value. Counties can do that also. Schools is 10%. But anyway, your equalized value, 985 million. 5% would be about, a little over 49 million. You have 2.6 million. So you have capacity for new debt, not that I'm suggesting you do that, about $46 million. So, then there's just some miscellaneous notes there on page 23. We do, maybe the note, page, the fifth, note D5 there on page 23, just that we do disclose that you did borrow another $750,000 on January 6th. Part of that was used to pay off the $500,000 bank loan, and then there was additional $250 of new money for additional projects. And then the last page 24 is the detail of your revenues compared to budget. We had this rolled up in summary fashion on the previous pages. That just gives you each category in the budget compared to actual. And, in total, you were, like I said, you were positive plus 83,000 in total. There's various ones are minus and some are plus, Page 25 is the same kind of schedule on expenditures. Where it compares the budget to the actual amounts. And here, like I said, you were 42,000 different than your budget on expenses. So that's it. That's your financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles for governments. I just noticed one typing error. So I'll take any questions.
Please.
Anybody? Okay, I'll just point to you, I guess.
General question, but your page 22 summary of how much you're paying the next 6 years to retire debt, basically $600,000 a year is our debt service.
Right.
On our budget of how much?
Total budget is like 2.5 million, 2.4 million, 2.5 million.
Is that,
That's not bad either. Again, you're less than 25%, you're 22 or something probably. That's not bad.
the subsequent event on page 23, the extra 750, 500, whatever, how would that change those numbers if it's 600,000? Or would it?
Yeah, I guess it would change it a little bit, yeah, because you're replacing that 500,000 with 750. So it's gonna increase those a little bit. I guess I don't have the debt service schedule on that, but, you know.
Do you
poten-
know the interest rate on the new debt?
I don't have that here. No, I don't know if you know that offhand.
In rough calculations, I think it goes up to maybe 26%, right in that 25% range that you mentioned.
Okay, okay, but the interest rate on the new debt, do you know what that is?
3.2,
Excuse me?
I believe it's 3.2.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great time to borrow money if you're a government, you know, interest rates are you can get 5-year money at less than 3% or even two, in the high twos, some governments are, so. Yes.
On the issue of that $750,000 general obligation bond, by what authority did the town do that? I thought that had to come to town meeting.
That'd be for
It was not a bond, it was just a note.
a note.
I didn't hear what you said.
It was not a bond, Kubi, it was a note. So the town board did that.
Okay, in the back?
Looking over this, it says the total revenues were 2,100, or 2,100,000, and the expenses were 2.5 million. Yet when I look at the budget that was given out in like November for the 2014, it showed 2013, and it showed in your total receipts of 2,508,000. Included in that is 408,000 for debt proceeds and funds applied. What does that mean?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're looking at, but if you look at the total revenues, you know, I think you're probably looking at page 7. Is that what you're looking at in the financial report?
Well, again, I'm just comparing, no, I'm looking at 24 and 25, the bottom line.
Okay, well,
2 million, but I'm also looking at.
yeah, something else, but I mean, you gotta add that 500,000 of borrowed money to that page 24. I mean, that's a receipt, if you're looking at receipts. 2,184,000 was your revenues, but they also borrowed at 500,000 of debt proceeds.
At the beginning of the year of 2013.
No, I think that was borrowed near the end of the year.
End of the year.
End of the year, but I mean sometime during 13. So revenues plus other financing sources is about 2,684,000. Yes,
You've mentioned depreciation a number of times in the schedule. Typically, what do you depreciate buildings at? What's the stuff like that?
I believe where he did the, and I suggested these, this is what, I do have those here somewhere. I think buildings that were going 40 years. And the equipment, I don't remember now, 15 was it?
I believe so.
Yeah. So, we took the county highway, the county highway one is one I've always have, which, you know, those trucks probably get a little more heavier use. So I think we extended the useful lives of trucks a little bit from what the county had. The county uses rates set by the State Department of Transportation, but, you know, those things are pounding up and down the roads every day and pretty heavy use, so I think we extended them a little bit from there for about 4 or 5 years more, so. Yes,
One question I had of you, on the 2012 audit, when you did that presentation, was if you couldn't see something, more transparent about a breakout like wages, and you mentioned that you don't really do wages in your reports, although this is a review, not an audit, correct?
correct,
Okay.
but,
So one thing that just seems more opaque than ever, on page 25, under general government, in 2012, your report, it showed the clerk making 81,466, and now you show him making 7,941. Where's the rest of that? onto?
Probably in that office wages. I guess we use the categories that were used in the budget, you know.
So this is also different than the last?
It's probably a little bit different, yeah, yeah.
So
yeah.
that's, comes out now, office wages and expenses and maybe other general government, which was about $40,000 and $30,000 each from last year?
Yeah, I don't know exactly, I don't have exactly
I guess the
what.
question is why did that change?
I guess this year we had last year we patterned it after the annual report that the town put together. This one, we used the budget and the accounting system that was set up. We recommended you go to a complete double entry accounting system. And the town board actually took quick action. I think by September, 3 months, you had a system in place. And that chart of accounts was maybe set up a little differently than the prior one.
It was set up to match up with Form C.
Yeah, okay. To match up with what's reported to the Department of Revenue. You're required to report to the Department of Revenue, and your prior headings, captions you were using did not always correspond to that. So, in our opinion, this is a better way to do it going forward.
So that's the actual wage then, the $7,000?
These are reported by function. These are not reported by object, so.
Oh,
So it's a little different format here. You don't, wages, supplies, contracted services, this is not gonna show that. This is gonna show what function the dollars were spent for. You'd have to go deeper into the records to see them by object. Yes,
To follow that down, that $7,941, that looks to me like that was close to the number that was spent on traveling expenses. Is that a fair estimate for that, or does that include other ancillary costs?
I really don't know. Yeah, I don't have the detail how we rolled that up.
And
I-
your office wages and expenses for $11,744, does that include their pension contributions and everything else?
That would be in there, yes, I'm sure that's in there.
So in the office wages and expenses, who is, am I assuming that the village administrator and our treasurer belong to that group, that category there?
Yeah, I would assume so, yes. Mhm. Yes,
That other, the next level of detail you kind of referred to, if we wanted to break this out by object rather than function, is that available to us?
yeah, I'm sure, certainly.
Okay.
Yes, Nancy.
The answer to that?
Yes.
Nancy, yeah.
Just to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly, and if so, to give some insight on Mr. Zappi's question. I'm assuming that the $7,941 for clerk, that would encompass compensation for the statutory duties of clerk. Is that correct?
I don't know, is that the way that's put together, Janet?
Probably gonna be mileage, per diem, things that are paid outside of salary for the duty of the clerk.
For the, okay, and likewise the same for treasurer, both of you have basically dual titles. You're a treasurer office assistant, one is statutory, one is not, and Bud is clerk administrator, again, one is statutory, the other is not, and therein lies the breakout, yes?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
It kind of got lost a little bit. At one time you're talking about, I think, an unassigned balance of 6% or something like that. You recommend that's kind of low. Can you touch on that issue?
okay, yeah, and what you're referring to is the page, page 6 is where we categorize the fund balance in the middle of that page. And this is relatively new terminology. They use assigned, and unassigned. Assigned means you have a purpose for it. And unassigned means it's cash equity, fund balance that has not been appropriated, that you need a certain level of fund balance, you know. You have payables, you have receivables, you don't, it's not a perfect world, cash in, cash out, you need, like I was saying, between 10 and 20% is somewhere in that range. But then 10% of what? I think your question is kinda, well, if you look on page 7, the town spends about $2.5 million. But 680 is long-term debt. You would normally not need a 10% of that, because you know what that is, that's not gonna change. You're not gonna have an emergency debt payment, but you might have emergency snow removal, you might have emergency road repairs. So, the rest of those expenditures on page 7, you know, total roughly $1.8 million, something like that. 10% of that, 180,000, that would be a reasonable number to have in an unassigned balance. You got 117. So you're a little lower. But you do have some monies up there in the assigned category, that if you aren't immediately using them, they provide cash flow, you know, for other reasons too, so. Hopefully you can follow that. Yes,
On the second page of your letter, at the beginning of the document, on page 2,
yep,
you say the town has omitted the management's discussion and analysis information that is required to be presented for purposes of additional analysis.
mhm.
It's required by Governmental Accounting Standards Board, considers it to be an essential part of financial reporting, et cetera, et cetera. Is that available to see for us?
That is not completed. I can give you a little history of that. And this is 10 years ago, 2004, when Government Accounting Standards Board, they put out a pronouncement that for a government financial report to meet the highest standard, it should include what this is called, management's discussion and analysis, a summary report prepared normally by the chief executive officer and the chief financial officer, similar to what a corporation would do with their annual report. You know, you have a letter in the front from the president or the CEO saying, hey, we had a good year in this area, we're not so good here, our new initiatives for next year are gonna be this. Well, government decided, the standards board said, yeah, that's a good idea for governments. I can tell you this, most small governments do not do them. They kind of find it a redundant exercise. It has quite a, it usually ends up being 6-7 pages long. Generally not used readily. Some of the bigger ones, City of Green Bay, they do one, Brown County, we do one, Door County does one. But most small towns, villages, small cities do not do them. And so we have to put this paragraph in there that although GASB considers it required, it's not, it's really not part of the numbers per se. So, I mean, it's something that we could, I mean, this year the town made a major step to get a double entry accounting system, capital assets with depreciation. I mean, that's huge. And that should be well thought of. They reacted quickly to what we suggested last year. Adding this MD&A, that's what we call it, management's discussion analysis, be something that could be done in the future. And I can give you town examples of that. But it's not there now.
Is it common for you to see governments borrowing money to pay off an old debt, and not only borrowing enough to pay off the old debt, but more? I mean, there's clear and
Well, I can tell you, governments in Wisconsin anyway, and maybe nationwide, are borrowing more than they used to. Levy limits is one key thing, you know, like the state of Wisconsin has levy limits. And, it is hard to, you know, levy limits went into effect, I don't know, real strict maybe 8, 9 years ago, something like that, maybe. Maybe not.
2005.
Maybe, yeah. Well, actually, it went in the mid-90s, but they've been changed a little bit. But if you weren't doing a lot of capital projects in your levy the first year that happened, you have to borrow, because, you know, it's all based on when the law goes into effect. And if you, for whatever reason, didn't do any capital projects in your levy, well, theoretically, you'd never be able to do them. You can get around it by borrowing. And, you know, I just certainly don't believe the town has, you know, huge amount of debt for its value, very, very small amount of debt, really. And it's all paid off in 5 years, so, you know, I mean, there's individual reasons to borrow, projects need to be done, different things like that, but, that's one of the major, you see counties borrowing a lot more now than they used to, because of levy limits. So, and it kind of trickled down to other governments too. Yes,
I understand your point about how you need a modern accounting system, double entry, bookkeeping, and all that. That's good, that's wonderful. What I'm more concerned about here, though, is that when I read through this report, I have a very hard time figuring out what the money's being spent for. For example, you've got here highway maintenance, and right underneath it, streets and highway outlay roads. Now presumably, one of those is gonna have quite a bit of salary in it. Why isn't the salary broken out? And what else besides salary is involved in highway maintenance? Cost of running the trucks, depreciation of the trucks? Why don't we get to see any of that?
well, it's all available. It's all available, but normally in a financial report of a government, you report by function. What is it spent for? What is the purpose of those expenditures? I mean, if you want it by object, that's all there. But it would make it obviously a lot longer, but, this is generally, revenues are reported by source, expenditures by function. You know, that's generally what a government financial report looks like.
Can we request, to get the object?
It's all public record.
Sure.
Yeah,
Of course.
I mean, can we have a copy of that as a body?
I don't have it, but yeah,
These, the numbers that everybody might be looking for, are usually, or always, available in the fall at the finance committee meeting, when we go line by line through the budget, salaries, fuel, truck expenses, capital, so everything is laid out line by line at that time, so it is all available.
And we have that information from last year's preparing the budget. It is here in the office. Please come in, take a look at it. It's all laid out.
Is that online, Janet?
No, no.
Why not?
I would point out that
Cool, but
this is
please.
an issue that has been brought up in the annual meeting every year for at least 5 years, and I know that because I've been one of the people bringing it up. I do not understand why we can't just have this as a normal, everyday operating procedure in this town. It doesn't make any sense to me. Can someone address that in a meaningful way?
Come to the next board meeting. Well, not tomorrow night, the first one in May. We'll have all that information here for you.
But it also depends on just how much detail you're looking for. And depending on the level of detail that you're looking for, we could bring you a ream of paper, or we could bring you a few sheets. Right now, we are working with Schenck to come up with what I believe will be a, sheet that you'll get every month, that will break down the budget amounts to what we've spent so far. And as soon as Kelly gets in here and she and I can fine tune this, this is gonna be available to you on a monthly basis on the website. Until that time, anybody can come in here and you can sit at the computer with us, because I don't know the level of detail you're looking for. If you're looking to find out how much money Dick Smith makes, I can show you that. If you're looking just to see what highway is in their wages, I can show you that. But everybody has a different level of detail that they're looking for. So, you need to come in here, you need to devote the time, so do I, and spend and take a look at this stuff. And it's easiest to do it at the computer.
Mike, when you were here in January, I think at the end of the meeting, Janet said to everybody present at the time, if there is any report you want, please let me know and I'll give it to you. I guess this is more for you, Janet. Has anybody come in to ask for reports of that nature that sort of compares how things has been spent? And it's been 3 months since that meeting.
No, sir.
Yes.
What about when we asked for the amount of money that was being spent on a particular road? We could not get that information except for waiting for several months to get some stack of paper that we needed. Are people gonna be charged if they come in to get that information from you?
If you sit and look at a computer with us, and it depends too, Carol, on the level of detail you're looking for. If you're just looking to see the checks that were written and the income that came in the different categories, we can show that to you.
Yes.
I'm going back to the subsequent event that was mentioned here. I know I was at the board meeting, town meeting, where we discussed the $500,000 loan that was subsequently paid off by this. I can't understand where the authority to borrow an extra $250,000 came from. Is that reflected in any minutes, any discussions, any motions, any official activity that allowed for this? I mean, where does the authority for borrowing that money come from?
We have documents from the lending institution which reflect what was done and what motions were passed at the town board level.
What town? I'm sorry, Bud. I've been to all the board meetings. I've never heard this subject come up. This is the first I've heard of it.
Okay, well, it's in the minutes, we've got minutes.
Does that have to happen at a board meeting, when you said you got a note, not money, not a loan or whatever, you got a note at the board level? I thought everything at the board level was in front of us. I thought it was always at meetings that are open meetings.
No,
Is there some other kind of meeting?
No, it's at a town board meeting. And the town board has the ability, authority, if you will, to borrow.
We know that, but when we know about most
And
loans, that's.
nothing, if,
Wasn't it a new loan?
if the implication, excuse me, if the implication here is that something was done underhandedly, you're wrong.
No,
It's
we
all
just
done
don't
in,
remember
it's,
being done in a
excuse me,
public meeting.
it's all done in an open meeting. We all have, the town has the record of those meetings, and you're more than welcome to come in and look at them.
How much are you obligated, or how much can you borrow as a board?
Mike?
47 million.
You
Yeah.
can go up to 47 million without coming to the
Well,
Well-
that's the amount that the statutes would allow us to do.
I believe you can't go 20 years on your debt, right? Without a-
Right.
There's some limits on.
There are limits to that.
I think you can do 5 or 10, right, as a town board. I guess I'm not a lawyer, you don't have your attorney here, but.
Yeah, there are limits to that.
Yeah, you
But
can't,
if you do go back and look at what Mike has presented and what he has said, the town has been extremely conservative. And that goes back years and years and years. I mean, that philosophy has, has proceeded through generations of town boards. We're not going to go out and do the 49, by the way, no way.
Does Act 10 restrict what you can borrow money for? Does it have to be a capital improvement project or anything?
yes. Yes, you cannot borrow in Wisconsin, I believe, again, I'm not yet an attorney. I've been accused of being one, but I'm not. You cannot borrow for operations in Wisconsin. Yeah, yes.
Can I touch briefly on the highway aids of 200 and some thousand, 200?
Yeah,
Those are restricted funds too, they can only be used for the road improvements, is that a restriction of-
well, I don't believe they're technically restricted anymore because that's really gas tax is what the state pays out to every government in Wisconsin. It's a portion of the gasoline tax that's collected statewide. And it's based on a rolling average, 6-year average of what you spend for highway maintenance and construction. And it's kind of a reimbursement kind of thing. There is no legal requirement that be tracked and said you're spending that directly on roads. There was, I get, 20, 30, I don't know, more than that, 30, 40, 50 years ago, I think. I don't go back that far, but,
Did you say a rolling average of Liberty Grove or Door County or?
no, each government's 6-year rolling average. Yeah, they take a 6-year average because they realize governments are gonna have spikes in there where they do a major road project, and it's gonna be higher some years, so they don't wanna base it only on 1 year. So they take an average of the last 6. And I think it averages, I don't know if you guys have town boards, I know, discuss that at their conventions and things. I thought it was in the low 20s%, the reimbursement. It's not, it used to be higher, used to be 25, I know, years ago when I worked in this. But it's like everything else, the state's paying less, keeping more, a lot of ways too. Yes,
So the extra $250,000 that you borrowed in January, what capital project is that for?
Fire truck.
Fire truck.
yes,
My name's Michael Mercier, I live in Ellison Bay. I would just like to add to this discussion that last fall, there were a number of finance committee meetings that this board sat in for a couple of hours each and discussed everything that everybody in this room is asking about right now. All the details you were looking for were discussed in those meetings. I was at the meeting that that they decided to take the loan out, so I don't go to all the meetings. But everything that's been discussed here tonight, I knew about. So I just wanted to pass that on to everybody here, that if we all make a concerted effort, just keep up with the town online, attend as many meetings as we can, and if you can't attend the meetings, all the minutes, all the information from the meetings are posted on the town website.
Do we have any other questions of Mike, please?
Can somebody tell me in 25 words or less, when the town can borrow, how much they can borrow, and what authority they need to borrow?
Go ahead.
I'm not sure on the bonding issue, there is a limit on amount that if a town goes for a bond, there are certain procedures. There did not used to be, but it's been changed now, so with a large bond issue, you need elector approval, I believe. So it's different than it used to be. Now with the smaller notes, the town board can do it on their own.
To any limit? The reason I ask is I'm trying to understand item 4 on our agenda. Why do we need to vote on emergency borrowing of funds if you guys can borrow funds anytime you want?
That resolution has been in there since day one, and the question comes up now almost yearly. This is for emergency expenditures that would happen if something happened before tax money came in. The authority to borrow that money still rests with the town board, but this emergency thing has gone to the electors as sort of I guess a feel-good approval that if the town gets in a pickle with some kind of disaster, that they could go out and borrow some money to cover that, should tax money not be available, with the theory that, well, when the tax money comes in, then you can maybe pay off that note and pay these things ahead of time. It does get kind of, you have to think about it a little bit, because you might be paying for something that basically was not budgeted for in an emergency situation. So when you come back, when that tax money does come in, well, now you are gonna pay off that loan, and you don't have it for your regular expenditures. So it's kind of it's been a tradition basically here.
Mike and I discussed this before the meeting, and you may want to make a comment on this as well, please.
Yeah, just like, it doesn't seem to serve any purpose to have that on there, and I asked why it was on there, so I haven't seen that typically at other town meetings I go to, so. I guess, as Bud said, it's been tradition, and maybe it's time to end that one.
I have an unrelated question about everybody asking for data and information and all that. Would it be possible, do people in other municipalities do something like have available online a locked copy of this data that we could do our own data mining on?
I think some do, as Janet was saying, put out a budget to actual statement.
No, just give me all the detail. Just put all the detail out on the internet and have it locked up, a copy that I can't modify and that I can look at anytime I want and play with it in Excel and do whatever I want with.
Yeah, I mean,
It's not technically difficult to do.
yeah, I don't know of any government that's doing that, but I mean, maybe there are. I guess not aware of that.
Yes, the board and here as my apologies, but part of it is the fact that if you had explained in this thing, I'm well aware of the $250,000 for the fire truck. I remember the discussions that were made on that fact. I did not relate the $750 plus the $250 extra being for the fire truck. If that had been added as a footnote on this comment, would have answered a lot of questions.
We could have put the purpose in there of the 250. You're right. We could have done that, and, you know.
Could the object be included in next year's report?
Then you get, you know, probably 4 or 5 more pages for expenditures at least. It's normally not disclosed in a report of this type. This is, although it's, you wouldn't call this concise per se, but, I wouldn't recommend putting it in here. I just recommend it as supplemental information.
When we get that budget to actual fine-tune, so that, I know what is going out there is correct and doesn't have to be corrected, I think that'll answer your questions. And we're very, very close.
Yeah, you've come a long way. I mean, I know I'm repeating that, but from where you were last July to where you are now, it's night and day. Yes.
Scott Murray, resident of Austin Bay. Going from the micro to the macro, I'm not an accountant. I've had some experience in corporate financial management, but it seems to me, I'm getting the impression that perhaps over the past 4 or 5 years, we have either borrowed too little trying to catch up in some manner. Now, obviously, that's not a question for you to answer, but I wonder if anyone else, or if I'm just wrong in that respect.
Bob, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think that the town board, and I'm not talking necessarily this town board, let's go back 10, 15 years. The town boards have been extremely conservative in their approach. When the two bond issues were taken out, one for this building, one for the North Fire Station, the boards at that time made the decision to pay that debt off rapidly, and I think Mike has alluded to that as well, so that the town did not have to pay any extra in interest money than was necessary. And with the levy caps coming in, that has had a negative, obviously a negative effect on what the town could do. It's a tough question to answer now because of being very frugal, if you will, has kind of come back to bite us a little bit. And what was thought to be the right thing to do at the time now begins to appear to present a problem. But I would never criticize the decisions of previous boards to be as frugal as it possibly could be and to watch the taxes that are assessed to, the town residents. I don't know if that answers you exactly or not, but.
Well, it does to a point, but does it also indicate that we are failing to inform residents of the infrastructure issues that are facing us and their costs?
Right. What has happened, and we have two committees now that have developed what we call 5-year rolling plans. They have done to the best of their ability, looked, and it's the Highway Committee and it's the Parks and Properties Committee. What they have done to the best of their ability is look at first the physical equipment, physical structures and so forth. What is going to happen over a 5-year period of time to those? Are they going to need replacements? Highway, for example, has gone out 5 years on projected roads that are going to need some sort of redoing, fixing, et cetera. And in the case of Parks and Properties, the same thing has gone into, they've looked at our existing parks. Are there things that are going to, anticipated to be needed between now and the next 5 years? We've never had that before. So there was no way at, say, a parks meeting or at a highway meeting to say, oh yeah, in 3 years out, we're gonna have to do this road. It was done kind of on a yearly basis, step by step. So we've gotten a lot better handle on the expenditures that we're going to face. And that, again, that information is available from those different committees. It shows us, as you have pointed out, that basically the town has probably not borrowed as much as it should have in the past to complete some of the projects. And what has happened in the past, in the budget meetings, roads are by far the largest expenditure that the town has. And what has happened in budget meetings, and we can go back again, 5, 10 years, every time it looked like, oh, that's gonna spend too much, the one budget that got nailed was the town roads budget. Money was extracted from the roads and put either in other pockets or was not taxed for. So now we have 5 years rolling out, then we were doing 5 years basically rolling back, putting off for future what should have been done at that point in time. Kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul in a sense.
Well, it's not just roads, I think.
Oh, yes.
No,
Yeah.
we're looking really
Oh, yes,
That seems to be an issue that
yes.
if this could be in some manner communicated more effectively,
Okay,
and I'm not criticizing, I'm just.
No,
saying
no.
That's not a typical function to taxpayers. I think it would be helpful.
okay, we'll have those two committees, and I'm gonna ask a couple of the other committees to begin taking a look, long-term, what sort of expenditures they're looking at. You're well aware of the harbor, the marina in Ellison Bay. You're well aware that very little has been done there. And you're also well aware of what it's probably going to cost to bring that town investment up to standard, I guess, or up to what it should be. And doing harbor work is very expensive. Yeah.
Let's get it out there.
Yeah,
We'll come to meetings.
all right. All right, anybody else have any questions of Mike?
Motion to accept.
Oh. All right. Is there a second, please? Second here, motion. All in favor indicate by saying aye, please. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion is carried. Thank you, Mike.
Who
Okay,
voted no?
thank you.
Kubi. Okay, now we have, would you like us not to handle the next resolution?
Yes. It's meaningless, you just said it.
Don't do it if it's meaningless.
Pardon?
Don't do it if it's meaningless.
I move we strike item 4 from the agenda.
A motion has been made, John made it, I didn't hear the second.
Second.
Who did that?
No.
Oh, Mr.
Any other discussion?
Gannon.
Yes.
How often in the past umpteen years that we've done this resolution for, has the town ever had to exercise it?
Not that I'm aware of.
No, we never had the emergency borough
We
funds.
never actually did the emergency.
Right, okay.
Right.
And this is really for a situation like a big tree falling on this building, putting a big hole in it, has to be repaired.
Right.
And it costs more than $500.
Right.
And you need to be able to access those funds.
Well, technically,
With the emergency.
right, technically, the board could do that without this resolution.
But a big amount?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't you say earlier that there's a kind of a limit? 46 million.
Yeah, if it's not a bond,
Hey,
if it's just a
please.
note, if it's just a note, the town board can do it.
Yeah. Corbett?
If I'm understanding your statements before this, the board can borrow money for capital, not for operating.
Well, if a tree falls in this building to improve this, to fix the building is a capital expenditure.
Well, but if a tornado strikes and knocks down all the buildings in downtown Guild Rocks, is that maintenance? You gotta fix the.
Well, the
roads, you gotta do this
town
and that.
doesn't own the buildings.
I think it's a mistake to not just go ahead and do this the way we've always done it.
Okay. All right, we do have a motion on the floor to strike the item, and it has been seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Motion carries. Okay. Okay, moving along quickly, to the chairman's report. Bud has put together, and Janet will be able to put that on the screen, some information that he has been working several weeks on in reference to how the town basically how the town basically compares with other municipalities in Door County. And it kind of gives us an overall picture, fiscal picture. So if, I kind of let Bud go ahead and do the narrative on this. Uh-oh, what did I say?
You starting with the first one?
Yeah.
Just did some comparative purposes as a result of various discussions at meetings and comments, showing total debt of a number of municipalities in the county that have debt. We started out with Sebastopol at $495,000, going all the way up to the village, and then Sturgeon Bay being the highest at $15 million. The town here is at $2.9 million, with Gibraltar about $3.75 million, and Egg Harbor after this summer will be at $7.5 million. The next graph shows a percent of allowable debt. We talked about that earlier tonight. Sebastopol again being a small amount, Liberty Grove at 5.6% of allowable debt, going up to the bigger numbers here. Sturgeon Bay is 37, Egg Harbor Village at 43, and Sister Bay at 71. Going to the mill rates, this is actually the total tax dollars that people pay. Egg Harbor is the lowest at $8.03, followed by Liberty Grove at $8.68. Moving up the graph, you go on this part of it, the village of Egg Harbor at $10 approximately. Can you go to the next tier? And then it just goes up, keeps going up here to $12 for Sister Bay, 13.5 for Forestville, 14 for Gardner. Going up to the final group, 15 for Forestville Town, Sebastopol at $15.70, Sturgeon Bay at $21.58, and Forestville at sanitary district, they got a pretty good levy of 26, almost $27 per thousand of valuation. Looking at the 10-year levy that the town has levied just for operations in the town, started in '05 at $1.63, crept up slowly to $1.98, $2. Then we had the revaluation where the valuation of the town jumped up. We dropped to $1.47, went up to $1.50, and then went down to $1.49 last year. Distribution of taxes, the tax dollars that everybody pays, 17.2% stays in the town. 83% goes somewhere else, to the state, NWTC, Gibraltar, and Door County. So there was somebody at the meeting last fall that said, wondering what they got for their $4,800 they paid in taxes. Well, they got 17% of that stayed here in the town, which is, I guess, somewhere between $300 and $400 out of basically $5,000. And the last one we have here, our budget percentages, what the town tax dollars go for in the town. In the budget, as I said earlier, about 26% goes for debt service, public works for the roads, 16.4%, general government, 15%, reserves, we have reserves after this year, 15%, public safety, the fire department, 10%, and then down to the other categories, culture and education, human services, the fire grant, applications, insurance, economic development. All those are line items, sums of line items that are in the budget that we work with during the finance portion of the town, and that Mike Mercier alluded to, where we go through that line by line in the fall and add and subtract and tear our hair out on what to do with that levy cap. So that's some interesting figures to look at.
Thank you. We do have copies of this, but please don't run to Sister Bay and show them this. Okay, going on, I've asked, we're going to change things a little bit here. I've asked a couple of the key committee chairmen to give a brief synopsis of their committees and their activities. And we'll go to the, excuse me, Highway First, Chairman Mike Walker. As I mentioned earlier, highway is the largest expenditure of our town, and that's pretty typical across the state of Wisconsin, is that towns, the biggest part of the budget always go for roads.
Good evening. John asked me to say a few words about the Highway Committee and about, you've heard some of the bad news in terms of what you can expect. I think it would be inappropriate to deny that road expenses in the town of Liberty Grove are going to be increasing fairly significantly, fairly quickly. I can't put numbers to that at this point in time because, as was alluded to previously, there was, and frankly, your resolution of emergency borrowing, in a sense, kicks the can down the road. And as long as we keep kicking the can down the road, the problem won't get solved. I'd like to just give a very brief history of my involvement with the Highway Committee and recall for you certain facts that I think are not being perhaps listened to as well as they should. One of the things is that the town, and this it goes back till June 12 when I came on, June of 2012, when I came on the Highway Committee, more or less as a response to a letter to the editor that I wrote in praise of Jay and the town crew who had trimmed out Waters End Road, and I wasn't even aware of it. I was coming back from voting one time, and I thought, boy, that's holding up pretty good, and it turned out that they had trimmed it out pretty significantly, and they had done so judiciously to the point that it wasn't noticeable. And I said so in a letter to the editor, and then John approached me fairly soon thereafter and said, would you like to be on the Highway Committee? And I said, sure. I think Jay and the crew does a fantastic job. There's basically 4 highway departments in Door County. The county, of course, has responsibility for the county and state roads. The city of Sturgeon Bay has responsibility for its own roads. And Washington Island has kind of a combination where there's county and local kind of shares the responsibility as near as I can determine because of their remote location, and then you have Liberty Grove. I think Liberty Grove, the fellows on there do an excellent job, and that may not be the opinion of some, but it is my opinion because I feel that in order to be an effective chairman, you have to support the people that are doing the job for you. And if you don't support them, then you need to tell them why you don't support them and seek to move for corrections. And I've tried to do that. I've tried to bring the committee more or less figuratively and literally to the center of the road. I was kind of past the Isleview Road situation. The only thing I took out of that situation was that it took from the time that Isleview Road was discussed for the first time at the committee level to the time that the last check was written for resurfacing that road took 3 years, 7 months, and 4 days. With a time limit like that, it's no wonder that there was a lot of angst and a lot of dissatisfaction. We need to move, and I've tried to do that on Garrett Bay Road. We need to move efficiently. We need to listen to the people. We think we've done that. When we did our inspections on Garrett Bay Road, there were no less than 4 arborists who got involved in that project, 2 on site on 1 inspection, 1 that I went with myself, and a 3rd who, Mr. Burke, over at Todd Burke, who did his own inspection. So we're trying to listen, and we're trying to again move literally to the center of the road and making making the town have safe roads. And one of the things that I know that some people feel that's an overblown in terms of the cutting and some of the things that have been done, but authority to maintain town roads is clearly laid at the town's doorstep vis-a-vis Wisconsin statute, Chapter 8203, Duties of Town Board, Parent 1, Oversight of Highways, Superintendent of Highways. The town board shall have the care and supervision of all the highways under the town's jurisdiction. Chapter 66, 1037, Beautification and Protection. The authority shall remove, cut, or trim, or consent to the removing, cutting, or trimming of any tree, shrub, or vegetation in order to provide safety to users of the highway. Chapter 893-83, Highway Defects, damages caused by highway defects, liability of municipality. There is liability involved. And I'm quoting now, if damages happen to any person or his or her property by reason of the insufficiency or want of repairs of any highway that any town, city, or village is bound to keep in repair, the person sustaining the damages has a right to recover the damages from the town, city, or village. And finally, Chapter 8603, trees on and adjacent to highway. Parent 4, cutting or injuring trees on highway. The public authority maintaining the highway may cut down, trim, and remove trees, shrubs, and hedges for the purpose of and conducing to the benefit and improvement of the owner's land or the highway facility. So, and this was a printout from the Wisconsin Towns Association, and I'm quoting their legal counsel now, that, quote, "There is no legal question as to the town's ability to log trees on every type of highway right-of-way," unquote. When I came on the committee, we did not have something that I thought that we needed to flesh out and be very specific about, and that was a mission statement. We did that, and on October 1 of 2012, the town board adopted it, and I'd like to read those things. They're fairly quickly. The Liberty Grove Highway Committee is a function of the Liberty Grove Town Board. The committee shall, 1, meet on a monthly basis or hold additional meetings as required. 2, ensure that all town roads are safe for citizen travel through investigation and report to the town board. 3, establish a yearly budget. For recommendation to the Town Finance Committee, set budget to include capital projects to be undertaken for that year. 4, formulate and keep current a 4 to 5 year schedule of projects to be undertaken, including but not limited to pave, chip seal, process of gravel, brushing, equipment upgrade, and maintenance. And 5, undertake projects and assignments that are road-related as referred to by the town board. The bottom line, and the fact that I would like you to take away from this, is that the Highway Committee is only advisory to the town board. The town board has the decision-making authority per state statute and per some of the things that I've read here. There's 3 facts that I think are either underreported or ignored altogether, and I'd like to just touch on those. Fact number 1, as Bud's graph up here showed, I've done more research. As most of you know, I was the assessor up here for a period of 40 years or less, depending on the taxing district. And I'm used to going in and digging out files and figures and finding out what the costs of things really are. And fact number 1 is that the town of Liberty Grove has the lowest or the second lowest overall tax rate in Door County for the past 10 years. And probably longer than that. I can only attest to 10 years because that's how far back I went. Fact number 2, Liberty Grove has its own highway department and is the only mainland community or village that does. So despite our having our own people, our own machinery, our own storage space, we have, again, the lowest or second lowest tax rate in the county. And for those of you who want to think beyond the county, I can tell you that I've done somewhere around 75 to 100 revaluations in the state of Wisconsin when I ran the Laird Company and when I was the assessor. And I can tell you that Door County has, Gibraltar School District has, if not the lowest, the second lowest tax rate in the entire state of Wisconsin. That's a fact. And the only one lower was where they had the nuclear plant who paid most of those taxes. And now that that's closed down, those farmers have got a kick in the pants coming because that is all off the the taxes, property taxes and utility taxes in that town were largely underwritten by that facility. And now that it's closed down, those tax rates are going to have significant multipliers. Fact number 3, Door County, Liberty Grove has the only, and I've made calls on this to taxing districts in the county, and I have not found any other taxing district in Door County, nor in the state for that matter. I haven't called them all, there's 1,850 of them. But I know people in a lot of these, and we have the only Heritage Road program in the county, perhaps in the entire state. Now, these are 3 facts. They're not conjecture. They're not Mike Walker trying to spin you a web. They're facts. And all I want to do is emphasize those facts, that I think the town of Liberty Grove is in good shape, but our roads are deteriorating significantly. And we are going to have to crunch some numbers. Nancy Goss has called me as chairman of the Finance Committee and has directed that our committee will definitely be required to put out in specificity funds that will be put aside each year for these large road grader truck type purchases. That hasn't always been done. It's going to need to be done. And my wife told me don't talk so much, so I'm pretty well done. Is there any questions that anyone would have? Sir?
Like you mentioned, now we got rid of the emergency borrowing, why are we kicking the can down the road?
Well, I think there's hard decisions that have to be made. I understand that, and the longer you put off making those decisions, maybe there's not enough facts in front of you to make a decision this evening. But the fact is that with the low tax rate that we've had and the fact that our roads are deteriorating, that's not something that I like to admit. But there is going to have to be some money, some serious money spent in the very near future on roads in Liberty Grove. Anyone else? Carl?
Mike, you mentioned the Heritage Road program is number 3. I know there hasn't been a lot of activity on that in the last year or so. Do you view it as having a conflict with the road program, and what can be done to get the two so they operate synchronously?
Good question. At the last Highway Committee meeting in March, it was decided that Lou Cavazos has a committee that's going to review the entirety of the procedures with respect to heritage roads. Is that done? Has that been done? Okay, not yet. One of the decisions that we kicked around back and forth on the Highway Committee was that I guess I felt, and I was the only one that did, that we should just make a survey of the roads in Liberty Grove and nominate those for heritage roads that we thought were appropriate. My fellow committee members did not share that. They felt that each individual in the town of Liberty Grove ought to have the ability to nominate his or her road for a heritage road. And that's, again, that was a 6-to-1 consensus, myself being the one. For that reason, last month I nominated 3 roads to be heritage roads, and this month I nominated 3 more. There are currently 7 roads in Liberty Grove that are heritage roads. And so with the nomination of 6 more, that should give us a pretty solid foundation for that program. In terms of the specifics, there's a lot that seems to be, there's some wrangling in the sense that how do you define a heritage road? That's always been a fairly nebulous decision, and I guess it comes down to a vote of the town board and the committee as to what they think should be. As an example, Woodcrest Road, which now is getting just beat to tar. Woodcrest Road on the east side of the road, past Settlement Road, has a beautiful trees that shroud the road nicely from the east, but the west side of the road is very normal. It's a very routine kind of appearance. So in a situation like that, and this is one of several examples, does that deserve to be a heritage road or not? Some say yes, some say no. And so I think the reason that, that we're waiting kind of for a little more guidance from each other, either on our committee or Lou and his committee, is that we need to flesh out the answers to these questions. And certainly if you'd like to be apprised of those questions, I'd love to have you on board with giving questions of your own. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
What say do the people who live on that road have when you pick your 5-year plan for the roads to be repaired? Do you ever even talk to the people who live there?
Who live on roads to be repaired? Sure. Bud and I just have done a road inspection in terms of, but one thing that we have to be very frank about is that some roads are in worse shape than others. We just had an application not too long ago where some people in a road wanted to have the road asphalted, and that came to us in the form of some letters, and then the next thing you know, we had some letters that didn't want it asphalted and said, leave it alone, it's fine the way it is, we like our gravel, and that was that. Through a series of telephone calls and conciliation with the various major players in that situation, it was decided to leave it alone. But if you have a road that, one of the problems, for example, is that with this Woodcrest situation now, when the roads are getting beat up because of the trucks going around Sister Bay, if people start using Plateau Road, which is incidentally one of the roads I nominated to be a heritage road, that was just resurfaced in 2013, well, you get heavy trucks going down that road for a year, and there's going to be a problem there, because that road is basically a mile long and only very lightly traveled by the people who live there, which are very few. So there's not a concrete answer to your question about, yes, we will call you between the hours of 1 and 5, et cetera, but we have to first look, I think to be fair to your question, we have to first look at, does this road need resurfacing compared to all the roads in the town? And if it's not high up, frankly, again, with the financial situation, your road is probably not going to be put high on the list.
And is there a list of these roads that are on your?
We have every road listed with a condition code as a result of inspection and as a result, I think, pretty much our inspections. And we do those inspections at least every other year.
And where can I see that?
I'll give you a copy. Sure. Give me your name after the meeting and I'll make a copy and send it to you. Sir?
On the Heritage Road situation where you're suggesting the committee wants individuals to come forward, wouldn't we have a more consistent approach if the committee would inspect all roads and make those decisions, and then get support from the individuals if they want to support particular roads? But it seems like the committee would have a much better handle on what should be a more consistent approach to heritage roads.
Well, you're probably right, Peter, but I think there is a deference to let people run their road up the flagpole, so to speak. As I used to say on the county board, if you get 11 of the 20 supervisors that salute it, you got yourself a flag. And I guess that's how the committee, anyway, I don't know what the town board feels like, but the committee, anyway, feels that the individuals ought to have the right to nominate their own road if they wish. But in terms of consistency, you're probably right. And I should also point out that Heritage Road is kind of a lightning rod politically with some people. I don't know of anyone who has submitted a nomination for a Heritage Road in some time. And by some time, I mean like a year.
Told not to. There's a moratorium on it.
The moratorium ended on 31 December, however. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
How do you go about nominating a road to be a heritage road? In other words, is there a form you would do
Yes.
at the village office?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Town office, yes.
Okay.
Sure.
So that's just what you do, just come in and get.
Yeah, and there's a little example on, there's basically 5 criteria historic, natural attraction, man-made attraction, 2 others that you assign a 1 to 3 code. Max value is 15. It's pretty simplistic, but it's effective. Yeah, sure. Carol?
Mike, I feel I need to clarify something. The Heritage Road nomination process does not restrict the person who would like to nominate a road to just nominate their road. It really works differently. Most of the roads that have been nominated were roads nominated by people who did not live on those roads, but because they knew those roads well.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that people need to know. You don't have to nominate your own road, but
No, you don't have to, and I don't think I said that, but, like, sure. Sure. Anything else? Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Parks and Property Chairman Lou Cavothos.
Thank you, John. And just to clarify, unless I have been charged with something beyond what the Heritage Roads Marketing Committee is supposed to do, the Heritage Roads Marketing, the Heritage Roads Marketing Committee, which is currently made up of myself, Nancy Goss, Gary Farber, and Jim Moronic, and I would love anybody else who's interested to participate. What we were going to do, which we haven't done yet, is to simply take the 8 roads that have been designated as heritage roads and collect information about those roads, historical information, artistic renderings. We've got some poets who are going to write some verse, so that when it comes time to publicize the gems that we have in our town, the 8 roads so far, we'll have, or 7, excuse me, we'll have a body of information to present on those roads. That's all we're going to do. We'll probably meet once or twice. There's no per diems involved. It's purely voluntary on that part. So just to clarify, unless I've been charged with something beyond that, but in terms of what Parks and Property has done, and I want to extend my thank yous to the committee members, Gary Farber, Christine Breidenhagen, Frank Weber, Jay Olson, and of course, always the assistance of Bud and Janet. A lot of time this year was spent on water remediation, 2 water remediation projects, one at Hotz or Europe Bay, and once at Sand Bay Beach, in conjunction with the Door County Department of Soil and Water. The Door County Department of Soil and Water is paying for all of this, but a lot of the legwork has been on the committee and especially on Bud. A lot of work has been done looking at the Rowleys Bay, the new, or what will be the new Rowleys Bay Town Park. The shoreline at Rowleys Bay becomes part of the town of Liberty Grove at the end of 2015, and a lot of planning has been done in that. As John already mentioned, we were tasked with coming with a 5-year rolling plan for capital improvements, like roofs and things like that, which we have put together. Thanks to Gary and Michael Mercier, we had a trial plan for a trash pickup in 3 places in the town, and unfortunately that was abused by people unnecessarily, and we are not having trash pickup in the parks, unfortunately, but we did try it, and so we got that out of our systems. The town branding project to see about representing the entire town rather than just Ellison Bay has been done but not necessarily acted upon. Bob Tidball had brought to the attention of the committee a very, I think, very valuable idea, and that had to do with thinning some of the brush along Highway 42 as you enter into Ellison Bay for the pure aesthetics of it. It's kind of on hold as well for financial reasons. The only little Band-Aid we did at the Ellison Bay Marina had to do with trying to repair some of the electrical work such that if people, children or others, were in the water, they did not get electrocuted, or try to prevent that. That is a bandage compared to how really decrepit the marina is, and if the marina were a city, it would be Detroit. So we're not in good shape when it comes to that. If you haven't, if the snow ever goes away and you get a chance to go to the Women's Club, the Sustainable Garden that Beth Coleman has there is a jewel. Everybody should see it if you haven't seen it. And one of the things that we did approve is, the town board that is, based on the committee's recommendation, had to do with a sign that Beth is working up that will explain what that sustainable garden is. We increased the fees that we use, that we charge for use of town facilities, and we also included the fees and for the use, for the purchase, I should say, of cemetery plots to sort of beef up the revenue a little bit. We also approved the coastal byways kiosk agreements, that one is going in the Kepsel's farm market, and then the Historical Society property. But those are the little things, basically, though. And I don't want to steal Nancy's thunder, and I'm not sure, we didn't compare notes, but one of the things that came out of the Finance Committee, of which I am a member, and dovetailed with the Parks and Property Committee, had to do with the bigger picture, where we can go and so forth. And that was the 3 or 4 weeks that we met as a large group of the Property Task Force. It was a voluntary group. It was made up of very widely represented interests in the town, the Door North, the Service Club, citizens at large, the Historical Society. It was as representative as we could find. And it was facilitated by Mariah Good from the Planning Commission. And so we had a lot of focus. And that's part of the vision that we have, that John talked about, that I've heard John talk about for years now, that has to do with what's the big picture? Where are we going? Who are we and what are we doing? How can we pump life into the town without necessarily changing its character? And the Property Task Force sort of identified 3 characteristics of us as a town. We're artisans, we're eco-tourists, and we have heritage. We have the Maritime Museum, we have the Historical Society, we have shipwrecks and things that go back to that heritage. We have artisans, obviously. And what we have most, we're not Sister Bay. We're not downtown Fish Creek. We have the escarpment and parks and heritage roads and things that would make this a destination as opposed to a pass-through. I think we're at a junction here. The arc of the town's history can bend in a certain way. And we could either look positively at what we can do to promote that without necessarily changing the character of who we are, or we could haggle over the purchase of every item that we need to do. Not that we should be unscrupulous about how we purchase things, but we could either look positively, or we could interpret, for example, an international information center for the escarpment, the Niagara Escarpment. We could look at that as sort of pretending that's a sleight of hand. Here's the escarpment, but what we're really going to do is get money to put someplace else. If taking that cynical view of something as worthy as the Escarpment Interpretive Center or something like that, then we're going to haggle, and we're going to waste the town's time, and we're going to flounder as a town. We're going to do that as well. The Property Task Force not only looked at that big vision, but was a response specifically to the needs that we had heard, for example, over and over again from Door North, which is that organization wanted a visitor center for Ellison Bay. What properties were available, what they should be, what we should do with those properties. All the properties that were out there were evaluated in a very systematic way by a very representative group. Where we go with that, we're going to have to go to the town with that. The town cannot purchase property without approval by the town electors. And again, like with the levy override, if other interests get involved because of retribution or whatever it might be, then that's perfectly okay. That's how you want to feel about things, but it doesn't represent the best interests of the town. Questions for me? Yes, Bob?
I'm wondering about subject that was discussed at last year's annual meeting, and a lot may have happened or not. One of the issues with Ellison Bay right now, we're very aware of it because we did something about it in case of discharge of tests. What about the valet property? Can you bring me up to date on the situation there?
Yes.
I mean, it's not a plus for.
Certainly not, Bob. There's a real balance that the town had to go through there. And on the one hand was what you said, it's an eyesore, it's a nuisance in many ways. I think everybody's kind of agreed about that. On the other hand, though, the town was very sympathetic to the personal situation that the Olsons had gone through. And in order not to step too much into their personal lives and to allow them a little breathing space in light of the losses that they suffered, the town sort of backed off a little bit. It doesn't mean, though, that given enough time, the town is not going to continue to pursue what it had pursued, which is to get their act together and get that place cleaned up. Is that responsive? I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, though.
Well, I was thinking more in terms of going beyond cleaned up and into the potential for that property.
In terms of the town being able to consider that as one of the purchases?
Possibly.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what the current owners of that property intend to do with it. So we have no idea. It would be presumptuous on our part to suggest that they do anything. It's their property. All we want to do is clean it up. Michael?
To add
Oh,
to that a
Nancy?
little bit, Lou, when the property task force was looking at the properties that had been suggested to the town for purchase, the Olson property was on the table, and it was disqualified almost immediately by everyone in the group because we don't have an answer for it. It is really currently not now for sale. We don't know what the owners are gonna do, and we did not want to, as a group, and we were a large group, deal with properties that were too tangential. Unless they're on the market and there and ready, we really have no business wasting our time considering what we might be able to do with them. And so, until the Olson property becomes available and there is a viable path for a potential there, it's not even in consideration.
And, yes, thank you, Nancy. And that's exactly the same thing that was considered with Dean Johnson's property downtown as well. We'd heard a lot about why aren't we buying Dean Johnson's property, but if we're not in a position to talk to anybody because they won't talk to us, then it's impossible to be able to deal with that. Michael?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Lou, but I thought I recall the last I heard regarding the Olson property was that I thought that the county sanitarian had given them a deadline sometime in May.
Mhm.
The board had decided to go along with that
It-
deadline as also a date for them to decide.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Michael. The town sanitarian did give them an extension to it through May. Yeah.
And the town is concurrent with that. We're acting in unison with the county on that.
Okay.
And we have obviously have, excuse me, have an ordinance in place that unfortunately we may have to exercise. Okay, thank you, Lou. Going on, I'd asked Supervisor Forkert, the town and the village of Sister Bay cooperate on a number of different levels, and I'd like to have Frank make some comment on that.
I'd like to open my remarks by thanking the electorate for giving me the opportunity to serve the last 5 years. I've learned a lot, and I know there's a lot more to learn. John gave me 3 committees to report on in 5 minutes. So I'll be very brief. Next to highways, in fact, before highways, is our fire exposure. And Nancy Goss, Lou, and I, and Pat Duffy and Scott Baker are on the fire board. And we meet monthly. We get into all the aspects of what's going on. We have seen that descriptions of all jobs and all future possibilities have been covered in the last 5 years. We have a marvelous chief in Chris Hecht, and I will tell you more about what he's done for the whole county in a bit. About 2/3 of the fire calls are in the town and 1/3 in the village. So I'm just going to go right ahead and say that the 2013 audit has been completed and it's satisfactory. Liberty Grove contributed $208,569 and Sister Bay $101,786. There were grants and monies spent that came from the Firemen's Association and other sources, meaning that in 2013, we spent $358,367. Our budget for 2014 is just up, I think, about $6,000. And that includes making sure that we're covering things that have been shorted in previous years. We have long budget sessions. To get back to Chris, large government grants have been available. We haven't had a really good fire paging system that reached into all the nooks and crannies of the entire county. Chris went after that grant and did that on the basis of our mutual fire group here with Sister Bay. We will be spending $1,839,778.01 to improve our emergency system throughout the county. This involves the other municipalities and the county, which will actually be overseeing the doing this. But this would have never happened without Chris's work. Are there any questions about the fire committee and our fire exposure? Okay, I'll go on to number 2, the Library Commission. Virginia Phelan is our chairman. Al Strack and Pam Abshire are on the Library Commission from Sister Bay. Henry Chim, Margot Warch, and I are on for Liberty Grove. We have a wonderful librarian, Betty Curzon, who has been with us for many, many years. She ran the little library down on the waterfront. She is the one that was the spark plug behind building the beautiful facility we have now, and she really manages it beautifully. She is an employee of the county. There are other monies that come into the library in the county for books and services, but the town and the village own the library in Sister Bay. And we split those costs. We have a wonderful secretary-treasurer in Ralph Blankenberg, who is meticulous, follows through, and does everything right. We meet monthly, and as I said, we're responsible for the building and maintenance. Our costs were $26,165 for the town and the same for the village. We had other grants and items that came in, monies that come in from the book sale and other things. So in 2013, we expended $78,540.40. Okay, we got a grant from the Collins family a little over 2 years ago, and we have worked very hard with a wonderful landscape architect and firm to install a beautiful reading garden behind the library. We've only spent the money on the work that we did, keeping an amount back from which we can maintain that. So we're not increasing the costs to the operating of the library to the town or the village. Our budget for 2014 is going to be $63,301. We have a wonderful schedule of children's programs, poetry programs, and other things. Please be involved. Please come and please enjoy it. Our garden is going to be opened for dedication in July. Please come and share it with us. Any questions about the Library Commission? Yes, Gui?
Frank, is there any reason why the library couldn't be open more hours?
Yes. County budget, people.
Couldn't Sister Bay and Liberty Grove suggest that the town and the village would pick up the cost of an extra assistant librarian or two?
Come to our meetings and let us know what you want. We've never had anybody, to my knowledge, except once, one person, come to the Library Commission meetings. So please come, okay? Third is the Sister Bay Utility Committee. This committee is a committee of the Village of Sister Bay. And I'm going to have to read this because it gets rather complicated. The chair is Pat Duffy, and the members from Sister Bay are Scott Baker and Shane Solomon. Fred Anderson, Peter Sauer, and I are the members from Liberty Grove. We meet quarterly now. We were meeting monthly, and I've objected to that, but I haven't had any response yet because I think we need to meet monthly to move things along. We really work with the plant manager to really supervise and know what's going on within that plant. We work on budgets. We work on everything that's necessary that the Village of Sister Bay does. During the past 3 years, we've had a joint ad hoc committee together to update the December 1988 agreement with the village to provide service to the Liberty Grove Utility District and oversee the plant and water operations and services. There have been 2 basic changes that have taken place in the last 3 years. Now there are 3 members from the village and 3 members from the town. Before there were just 2 from the town. We have no way of objecting and bringing things to a halt so that they could be resolved properly. Let's see. One of the issues we've been trying to resolve through that ad hoc committee was that the village claims sole ownership, and this has been challenged by the town. And one of the things we changed in the updating of the 1988 agreement was that if we cannot resolve disputed issues in this utility committee, we will go to mediation rather than arbitration, because in the last 30 years, most disputes on things like ownership and other things are now being resolved through arbitration. And something very important is coming up on May 20th at 4 p.m. in this town hall. This committee will meet to present their positions on plant ownership and other related issues. Please come. Research the documents that will be available beforehand and help us support the town. Does anybody have any questions about the utility committee?
What was that date for that meeting?
Let's see, May 20th at 4 p.m. right here in this town hall. Any other questions?
No, Frank, I think that's it. at the South Station.
Oh, it's here. I think.
Okay, I got the South Station, so we better check it.
Okay, well, I have it in my address.
Okay.
We'll clarify it,
We'll
okay?
clarify it.
And make sure everybody knows, okay? In closing, remember that all meetings of committees are open to the public. And these three committees, nobody other than the committee members and the staff members that we work with have been there. If you really want to know what's going on, come. I urge all voters to get involved by coming and learning. I'm also always available to answer questions and find answers for you. Call me at home. Any closing questions? Peter?
A correction, you said that presently the agreement is that we will settle disputes by arbitration,
No, by mediation.
by mediation.
Yes.
You said it was both, but in your final word, you said.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you, Peter. Any other questions?
Okay, thank you, Frank. You want to make a couple quick comments? We've got to move along, so. Nancy's head of the Plan Commission, by the way.
Okay, bring this down to my level. Liberty Grove has what I consider or believe to be one of the best plan commissions that Liberty Grove has ever had. Our jobs are, first and foremost, vision and planning for the town. And that's on one hand, a thrilling and exciting task, and on another hand, it's really scary. Because the ordinance that you're working on or something that you're tweaking, whether it be land division or subdivision or erosion control, whatever, the law that sounds so good or the rules you're making that sound so right, 10 years from now, how are they going to be interpreted and how are they going to bite you in the butt? So that's the scary part, but it's also exciting. So first and foremost, our task is to have a vision for Liberty Grove as to how Liberty Grove will look based upon how the land is used. Secondly, a task of ours is as a recommending commission to the board. We hear pending Door County zoning ordinance text amendments. We always get copies of them. This is how we're thinking of changing it. As a municipality under county zoning, we have an opportunity to input on any of those changes, which means we have to look at the ordinance, look at the pending language changes, discuss it as a plan commission, decide if it's right for our town. If not, how we would like to see it changed. If so, make a recommendation to the board who will recommend to the county, we think it's okay, or no, we would like to see it modified suchly. We also act as one of two quasi-judicial bodies in the town of Liberty Grove, the second one, of course, being the town board, when we hear variances, which are strictly governed by state statute, which means that as a 7-person commission, we need to be trained. And this is one of the areas where I feel so confident and so good with the people that we have on the commission. They're all bright, interested, dedicated, hardworking. They do their homework. They step forward for training and show a real interest. And that is one of the most important aspects of a plan commission, because we do deal with not only the county ordinance, but any Liberty Grove overlays as far as land use goes. Plus, we also have to be very diligent looking at cutting-edge case law, because that is what defines variance law and zoning. So we've always, as a commission, got a lot of work on our plates. And if we do not have a variance or a CUP, or we're not working on language of some sort, we've always got the comprehensive plan to fall back on as far as tweaking that, upgrading it, and eventually reopening it. Thirdly, the Plan Commission provides service to the Liberty Grove residents and property owners. And Two of the things that we worked on very hard over the last couple of years were the building structure and control ordinance, which basically says that it's allowed by state statute for towns to adopt this. And it basically allows the town to do an ordinance making persons, when they want to do a zoning project, sign off that they will follow all state, county, and local laws. And above and beyond that, we worked on this for almost a year. We did what was called the applications guide, which wound up being a better document, actually, at least in my mind, than the actual ordinance, in that we defined every single step of the way for a property owner who wants to do any kind of development on their property. This is who you see first. This is, you need this application before this application. Here are the numbers you call. This is the person you talk to. It is really a hard copy blueprint for what a developer might want to do. And if there's something that those of us who have been in planning and zoning have learned, it's that people don't necessarily want to do the wrong thing or do something that isn't in the ordinance. They just don't know what they can do and who they can contact and how it has to be done. And this applications guide, which we have available here at the office, really does spell that out, and I think it does a great job of it. We also struggled through a land division ordinance this year, primarily to be kept in the loop. As a municipality under county zoning, if someone in Liberty Grove wanted to divide, say, a 40-acre piece of property into 8 5-acre pieces, all they needed to do was go to the county, and we would find out after the fact. And we said, how can we be kept in the loop? We don't like getting these sheets after the fact saying, oh, so-and-so just, made 40 pieces out of his land. And they said, if you had a land division ordinance of your own, then they would have to come to you first. We did that we were doing that concurrently, right after the building structure and control ordinance. And with both of these, we did a lot of homework. We were back and forth continually with Mariah at the county. Dave Soderman was still working then, back and forth with him, and they'd send back copies full of red ink, and we'd scratch our heads and go back at it again as a plan commission. And finally, after about a year, have it all whittled down so that the county was good with it, our attorney was good with it, we were good with it, and we sent to the board, and I think after a couple times kicking it back to us, they were finally good with it, and we now have a land division ordinance, and the county does have to keep us in the loop. And that's about all I have to say about our plan commission. We don't meet if we don't have anything significant to keep us busy for, an allotted meeting time. And that's basically in the interest of, keeping the costs for our commission down. And I do believe, to the core of my being, that Liberty Grove has one heck of a deal in its plan commission. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go on to item number 6, business from town electors. This is your opportunity to address the electors of the town. We ask you to step to the podium, state your name and address. If you make a motion and somebody would like to second that motion, we ask that you stand, second the motion, and identify yourself. And those in the audience, if you'd like to make comments on the motion, again, if you'd step to the podium and make your comments. The reason for this is the meeting obviously is being recorded. It'll be on YouTube, as all of our meetings are. And you won't be recognized if you have the cameras over there, and you won't be recognized if you have your back to the camera. So, and I think probably the easiest way to do this is to go row by row, and if the two town supervisors wouldn't mind, I think I'll start over here. Mr. Schwartz, I'm not sure what row you're on, but if you'd start and we'll go row by row, I think that's probably the easiest way to do it. You're good, okay. Anybody in the second row, please? Third row. Fourth row, I think fourth row. Hugh, I think it starts with you, right? Okay, fourth row, please. Why don't we let Susan go first, please?
Susie Watson, Gills Rock. I would just like to really welcome Hugh Mulligan, who is one of our new supervisors. He didn't quite get the introduction that Lou got, but we would be very happy to welcome you to Liberty Grove Town Board. We're really thrilled to have you. We hope you are used to the best of your abilities and put on the important committees that your background would suggest that you should be on, because we really think we need your guidance, and we're really pleased to have you here. And that's all I have to say.
Frank? Frank? Or Carl, I'm sorry.
Carl Zopfi, also of Gills Rock. I have a prepared statement here with your forbearance. Probably no one would disagree that the employees of the town of Liberty Grove are indispensable, industrious, responsible, and greatly appreciated by the board and the residents of town like myself. The knowledge and the experience they collectively possess are invaluable and contribute to the smooth operation of town business and maintenance. Their input when solicited by committees or the town board should be utilized when it is necessary to gather information. However, their position as a chair or voting member on a committee creates the perception of, or the potential for, a conflict of interest as it regards job-related decisions or biases. Despite the board's rebuttal that the town attorney has advised that this current practice is not illegal, it can be perceived to be unethical and should cease. At both the 212 and 213 annual meetings, a motion was made, seconded, and carried by a large majority to end this current practice and to restructure committees to reflect this change. In 2012 and 2013, this advisory mandate expressed by the constituency present here was rejected. We ask that this year the board accept and act in favor of the will of the people as we once again make the following motion. We move that despite the town's attorney's opinion regarding legality, the town of Liberty Grove immediately restructure committees as necessary, eliminating town employees as committee chairs or voting members, and permitting only public input or solicited information from town employees at committee and town board meetings. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please rise, state your name.
Louis Lufterhand. I live in Ellison Bay.
Thank you. Discussion, please.
Thank you.
Since I seconded the motion, you can take it for granted that I'm in favor of it. I'd also like to say that I think there's a very serious problem in the town with committees, and the tendency to have town employees serve as voting members or chair of committees is just one of the difficulties. It seems to me it's also a problem that, especially in a quasi-judicial committee or commission, that people who are not residents, not voters, and not really associated with the town of Liberty Grove serve on committees. Since so many things are done in committees, so much discussion of important issues takes place in committees, and there is often so little discussion of a committee recommendation once a committee report goes to the board. Seems to me very important to address the issue raised in the motion. And I also suggest that maybe the town board should think about whether or not non-residents should serve on committees and commissions. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, we have a motion and a second before us. I've asked Bud to read the motion so it's clear for everybody.
The motion, Mr. Zapfi moves and Mr. Lucknerhan second moving that despite the town attorney's opinion regarding legality, the town board of Liberty Grove immediately restructure committees as necessary, eliminating town employees as committee chairs or voting members and permitting only public input or solicited information from town employees at committee and town board meetings.
All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next row, Lee, I think it starts with you. Anybody in that row? The next row, I think it starts with you, Mike. If I've got the rows correct, anybody in the row with Mike Barkey? Yes, go ahead.
Not to repeat everything that I just said, my name is Kubi Luchterhand. I live in Ellison Bay. I would like to move that this committee request the Board of Directors not to use non-residents of the town of Liberty Grove on committees or commissions.
Second,
You want to rise and just for,
Carl Zopp, second.
thank you. Discussion?
Nancy Goss, Timberline Road. I can only speak from my experience as chair of the Plan Commission. And when I first got on the Plan Commission, oh gosh, 6 or 7 years ago, we met as a body of 5, almost always. Statutorily, it's a body of 7. And every single week, there was at least 1 people, usually 2 people gone, and we limped along like that for a couple of years. And then 1 person dropped out, and then another person, we were 5 permanently, and we were limping along, and I was beating the bushes. We put ads in the paper. I called people on the phone. I accosted them in the grocery store and fellowship at church. Would you please serve on our Plan Commission? We had a volunteer who had recently moved to Door County and thought we had things settled, but there were some problems with establishing residency, so by residency in Wisconsin, and we kept limping along for a period of 3 years plus when we did not ever have 7 people on our Plan Commission. And 1 person eventually did join our Plan Commission. She is from Ephraim. She has 18 years of zoning experience, and she is at every single meeting, and I suspect that is where this is coming from. However, our ordinance states that this is acceptable, and in such a small community as Northern Door County, I don't know that the difference in distance between Ephraim and Liberty Grove is all that great. All I know is that we now have a functioning, fully educated, dedicated, there every single time Plan Commission who does their job. Our ordinance also states that when a position becomes vacant, first choice always goes to Liberty Grove residents. We would love to have a fully functioning Plan Commission with all 7 of the members being Liberty Grove residents. When that is not possible, and has not been possible over the course of several years, rather than operate in, not defiance of, but for lack of a better term, not even being able to operate statutorily correct because we're not 7, I feel our ordinance allowing non-resident members, if another qualified Liberty Grove resident cannot be found to fill the position, I feel that's extremely fair and also good for the town.
Anybody else? You?
My name's Hugh Mulliken. I live at 9855 North Bay Road. I have about 25 years of experience in the county zoning, plus I have experience in zoning of Sturgeon Bay, the zoning in the town of Village of Egg Harbor, Village of Sister Bay, the Village of Ephraim. So I have quite a bit of experience, Nancy, if you like another person.
Anybody else, please? John,
John Skokes, about the North Harbor Road.
can you please? Thank you.
I'm John Skokesbach, and I live, I guess, in Gills Rock, more or less. You can put me on a waiting list also, Nancy. I just had a general question. Do we have other committees where we have this kind of situation? Someone who's not a town resident who's on a committee? And if so,
Economic
what's the background behind that?
Economic development.
Okay. Because nobody else wants to do it, or are there other reasons?
And the background.
Thank you.
What was the answer to that?
Economic development. Okay, anybody else on discussion? All right, I'll ask Bud to read the motion.
If this is correct, Kubi, the motion is to recommend to the town board to not have non-residents of the town of Liberty Grove on committees or commissions.
I'll do.
All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Janet, count time.
Get 'em up.
There you go, Pat. I got 21, put 'em up again.
Is this
Yeah.
the yeses now?
This is in favor of the motion. And those opposed to the motion? Motion is defeated. Next roll. I think it's the last row, I'm not sure. Anybody else? Carol? Oh, we're moving on. If anybody else wants to address the motion died. Or didn't die, it was defeated, I'm sorry. All right, anybody else? I believe we're in the last row to address the town electors. Carol?
My name is Carol Moronic, and we live at East Torbluff Road, Ellison Bay. This is awfully close. This is to our two newly elected board members, Hugh Mulliken and Lou Cavazos, from concerned, optimistic citizens of Liberty Grove. I would like to express congratulations and sincere wishes for a successful, satisfying term of office to you both. Both of these men have come to the table with particular skills, knowledge, and experience. In the case of Lou Cavazos, who served as an appointed board member for a partial term, and this is a compliment, being the king of volunteerism in Liberty Grove, as he is, Lou was immediately given many committee responsibilities, including chairman of the Parks Committee, and has served those committees extremely well, as I'm sure he will continue to do. Hugh Mulliken, as we all know, has had extensive experience for many years in local and county government and in many diverse areas of interest. We are delighted that he has decided to return to commitment of service to the town of Liberty Grove, for he has much to offer, and we as a town have much to gain. We look forward to Hugh's involvement on the board and committees and expect that his knowledge and experience will be positively exploited. To the entire town board and committees and commission and staff and residents, this is the beginning of a new year. 2013 and the winter of 2014 was rough, very rough for the entire town. But spring is here, we think. At least it was. We have the opportunity to begin afresh and strive for harmony, cooperation, respect for differences of opinion, and civility in action and communication. Let's do it.
Anybody else? Last roll. Anybody else reconsidering and would like to? Okay. If not, we need to set the annual meeting for next year. Before we do that, I'd just like to make a couple quick comments and thank everybody for coming. Thank the supervisors. Thank Hugh for running for the office and being willing to serve as a town supervisor. Thank Gary for his service as a town supervisor and on the committees. Government is always in transition, and it's important that government looks to the future to do the best that it possibly can for its citizens. We are fortunate that we, if you will, are on the bottom rung of governments, but it is the closest to democracy, direct democracy that we have in this country is at the town government level. And I think that, tonight bears that out. I would like to leave you with two quotes that I find very interesting. One from Bill Gates, and that is, yesterday's answer has nothing to do with today's problem. And another one from Brian Tracy, it's practice anticipatory thinking, what is likely to happen, and what will you do then? I think those are two kind of eye-opening quotes. Anyway, we need to set the 2015 annual meeting. It should be at 7 p.m. on April 21st, 2015. If somebody would make that motion.
So moved.
Carl moves. Is there a second? Nobody wants to meet. All right, Kubit seconds. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Everybody in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everybody.